After losing the great love of his life, Roosevelt leaves New York and heads into the rough country in Dakota, working cattle and riding patrol like any cowboy. Years later, he goes back to Washington, leans on McKinley, comes in as vice president, and ends up taking command of the nation when the president is assassinated, changing the country's course. While the Lakota leader American Horse passes through the small town of Billings in Montana, two young Cheyenne women take a break in the shade of a pine tree. In simple skirts and worn shawls, one straightens the other's clothes, looking steady, as if to say that Washington politics comes and goes. But that ground is still theirs and part of the story of the West. At the end of the 19th century, a lot of families lost out. West saw a guy with a camera as a rare chance to prove they existed. They dragged the couch out into the yard, lined up their tools, showed off corn, chickens, a horse on the lead. They wanted to record sweat, faith, and progress, making it clear they were building this country too, from one end to the other. Ashishishi, a scout from the Crow Nation the soldiers called Curly, was riding alongside the 7th Cavalry when everything went bad at Little Bighorn. From a hill, he saw Custer's line break. He slipped out along trails only he knew and carried the news. The Army's hero had fallen, and the war on the plains had just gone to another level. In the early hours of June 2nd, 1899, near Wilcox, Wyoming, an armed gang pulls off the kind of job people only read about in dime novels. They stop a Union Pacific train, separate the engine and the express car, blow the safe, disappear with a fortune, and swap horses along the trail. Soon, every ranch is talking about Butch Cassidy and his wild bunch. In 1905, in Canyon Diablo, Arizona, a bunch of officers yank the corpse of outlaw John Shaw out of the coffin, lean the body against the saloon fence, shove a bottle of whiskey in his hand, and burst out laughing, as if telling every criminal, "Around here, the game always ends in the worst way for anyone who thinks they can challenge the law." Around 1908, on the plains of southeast Montana, the Northern Cheyenne leader leads the Sundance. The people form a large circle. He appears painted in red and black, with branches on his head, and there, between fasting, chants, and drums, each warrior faces his own pain to renew his faith in the tribe and in the future of his people. In Texas in 1908, out at the Matador Ranch, cowboy Harry Campbell decides to trim Canadian George Patullo's hair inside a line camp partly dug into the ground. While the scissors move, the reporter pokes him with questions about dust, cattle, and loneliness, turning a simple haircut into a living snapshot of ranch life in the Old West. Still a girl, Anna Emmeline McDoulet, Cattle Annie, dives into crime in Oklahoma Territory. With Jenny Stevens, Little Britches, she carries a revolver and a rifle, deals in stolen horses, whiskey for Osage and Pawnee, and ammo for gangs, until she's grabbed by federal deputies in 1895, when her fame finally runs out. Around 1870, near the border, a Texas cowboy poses side by side with a man from the Great Plains, maybe Kiowa or Comanche. Spurs, a wide knife, a fancy holster, and a revolver show one man's trade, while the other carries the pride of a tribal warrior in a tense meeting that blends respect, fear, and mutual interest. In the mid-1800s, a white hunter named John Johnson swore revenge when his native wife was killed. He followed tracks through the Rockies and across the plains, attacking Crow groups in silence. The story spread from ranch to ranch. They said he tore out his enemies' livers just to spread terror along the frontier. In the early 20th century, out near Jordan, Montana, Bob Levitt's saloon was the place to go after working cattle. A cowboy would lean on the doorway, knock the dust off his boots, and order a stiff drink. That's where they argued over cattle prices, local elections, old grudges, and even who was going to run the next card game. In October 1862, right after the bloodbath at Antietam, Lincoln went out to the camp in Sharpsburg to look his army in the eye. At his side were Allan Pinkerton and General John McClernand. They walked between muddy tents, counted men, ammunition, and horses, and spoke in low voices about how to keep the Union standing. At the end of 1890, at Wounded Knee Creek, the 7th Cavalry surrounded a group of Lakota, saying it was just to collect weapons. A stray shot turned into panic, and the Hotchkiss guns spoke louder. In less than an hour, the Snow-White Valley was filled with bodies, most of them women, children, and elders who didn't even know why they were falling. In 1948, in the hills near the Little Bighorn, a handful of old veterans went back to the field where everything had gone up in flames in 1876. Lakotas and Cheyennes pointed out hills and ravines, remembering where the 7th Cavalry broke. Bill Gruetta captured every face, knowing that might be the last time they were all there together. In 1907 in Western Canada, a hunter from the Stoney Nakoda Nation crosses paths with the explorer Mary Schaffer. With his wife Leah and daughter Frances by his side, he draws a map of a hidden lake from memory. Years later, that rough sketch forces the government and official maps to better recognize the indigenous territory that had always been there. In 1890, on the slopes of Oregon, water cannons tear whole hillsides apart to chase gold buried in the gravel. Mud floods the valleys, clogs creeks, and covers the banks where there used to be thick forest. The money goes uphill, but for decades, the ones who pay the price are the twisted river and the small towns down below, with no say in it. In 1869, a Western Shoshone man stops at the edge of a cliff and sees the tracks shining in the desert. Down below, the Humboldt River squeezes between rocks before disappearing into the canyon. The railroad, newly joined at Promontory, carries profit, soldiers, and settlers into tribal lands while the country rushes past in front of him. In 1910, in Mercer County, West Virginia, after church and at the grocery counter, the talk always comes back to the two brothers who, half a century earlier, wore opposing uniforms in the Civil War. One followed the Confederacy, the other the Union. Peace came back, but the town is still arguing over what kind of belief can split a family apart. Skagway, 1898. While the Klondike gold rush fills ships and streets with prospectors, Jefferson "Soapy" Smith runs the counter at his saloon. He controls rigged raffles, shell games, and fake telegraph news, buys off sheriffs, and turns the town into a profitable trap for anyone who shows up late to the gold. New Mexico, 1908. A settler family pulls their tired wagon under a bit of shade, opens the kitchen box, and sets up a roadside kitchen right there. While dry dust settles on wheels and harnesses, they have a meal, fix what they can, and get organized to keep heading toward the Old West, not knowing what's waiting up ahead. Between 1890 and 1900, near Salem in the Willamette Valley, the silence of the pine woods starts to disappear. Loggers cut down tree after tree, leaving only stumps lined up like markers of conquest. In no time, fences, plowed fields, and roads move in, and the area turns into farm country and hard work, no longer just thick forest. Around 1905, on a farm near Dodge City, the work stops for a moment, and the Price family gathers in front of their simple wooden house. Next to them, Bill Cope balances with a puppy resting on the bicycle, everyone curious about that invention that seemed to announce a country leaving the old century behind. In 1910, on the streets of Sheridan, Wyoming, a man crosses the road riding a trained elk as if it were a workhorse. In the north of the country, some ranchers are still trying out ideas like that, looking for ways to haul loads and handle the snow. In a West where the line between improvising and making rules was still pretty thin back then. In the 1890s, in Idaho, the counter at Jackson's Bar has a rifle on display, almost like it's part of the place's uniform. With the sheriff always far off and the law arriving slowly, the saloon owner uses the gun as a warning. This is a place to drink, play cards, and make deals, but anyone who starts trouble quickly learns where they're standing and who's in charge here. After the surrender, on paper the war was over, but up in North Texas things were still ugly. Old Confederate soldiers got back on their horses, formed gangs, robbed roads, and hunted freedmen and Unionists, while the law showed up way too late in Sherman. For a lot of people, it was just another kind of battlefield. At Fort Belknap, out on the northern Great Plains, an Aaninan woman faces the world carrying the weight of a war name, takes a prisoner blackbird. She grew up listening to the elders, holding on to the language, bringing back rituals and family life to keep a people alive that the government had tried to break. And every day, she decides she's not going to let that die. Around 1885, on a street in Helena, Montana Territory, two women in long skirts stop for a moment to talk about news and gossip. Behind them, shopkeepers lift their doors, wagons head to the mines, dust rises, and the mailman hurries to finish one more route in that little corner of the frontier. Out there, the West was still learning to walk. In 1885, near Prescott in Arizona Territory, a soldier from the 10th Cavalry marches alongside 3 Apache scouts from the very land they know by heart. Together, they read tracks, escort wagon trains, and cross dry valleys in a time when every footprint could spark another war on the frontier, with no guarantee of coming back alive. In 1886, in the Loup River Valley, Nebraska, a couple and their 3 kids raise a plank cabin near the water. Life revolves around wheat, cattle, and unpredictable weather, between drought, flood, and constant wind, far from the railroad, with rare mail and neighbors only showing up on horseback when they can. They live on trade and sheer frontier stubbornness. In 1892, Creede was booming with miners chasing silver. Muddy streets, wagons rattling by, saloons and boarding houses opening non-stop. The post office and the telegraph wire guided old veterans, gamblers, and outlaws, all racing to grab their share before the good times dried up and the dream turned into just another frontier memory. In 1905, Orland Osgood put up a saloon out in what would become Carter County. That's where folks drank warm whiskey, played cards late into the night, and slept on plank beds. Cowboys, drovers, and travelers stopped to close deals, collect debts, and trade trail talk around the bar, turning the place into the spot where the whole area settled its business. Between 1905 and 1912, Irwin E. Smith roamed Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona with a plate camera. He caught the last breath of the open range, herds pushed along by shouting, the cook at the chuck wagon, night guards staying up till dawn, and long rides across the land, while fences, trains, and progress started boxing in the way of life Cowboys swore would last forever.